No gift. No call. Fifth birthday in a row. Then her story hit. White BMW. Red bow. Thank you, Mom and Dad. I stared until the screen blurred. 5 years invisible. 5 years of maybe next time. So I did the only thing left. I cut them off. Blocked every number. Silence tasted like oxygen. 2 days later, my doorbell rang. Mascara streaks. Hands shaking. My mother on my porch, crying. Cassandra, please, we're family. Family? Family remembers birthdays. Family knows their daughter. Family doesn't need Instagram to notice me. My name is Cassandra. I'm 28. This story begins last birthday. But it was written over 5 years. Last night I watched a car get crowned. Today I watch a crown fall. She wants back in. I'm holding the lock. 5 years. That's how long my birthdays disappeared. At first I told myself it was a mistake. People forget. They get busy. It happens. But 5 years in a row? That wasn't forgetfulness. That was choice. I moved out at 18. Paid rent with waitressing tips. Studied accounting at community college. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. Every degree credit, every textbook, mine. Meanwhile, Haley floated on a cushion of comfort. 4 major changes. 6 years to graduate. Parents covered it all. When she stumbled, they framed it as finding her path. When I called after my 23rd birthday, hurt in my throat, Mom said, "Oh, honey, we were so busy with Haley's interviews." Like my existence was background noise. 24, same silence. 25, nothing. 26, I stopped waiting. But hope is a cruel habit. At 28, I thought maybe, just maybe, especially after a new apartment, new promotion. At the September family dinner, I dropped a hint. My birthday's coming next month. Mom smiled, eyes locked on Haley's story about influencer drama. That's nice, dear. The mashed potatoes were more important than me. Then October 15th arrived. No calls. No texts. No card in the mail. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Nothing. Saturday night, I poured wine and opened Instagram. Haley's BMW wrapped in a bow. Our parents in the frame, glowing with pride. Best parents ever. The comments gushed. Amazing parents. So lucky, Haley. Even our aunt praised them. Not one relative remembered me. I sat frozen, chopsticks slipping from my hand. It wasn't about money. It was about proof. Proof that their love was selective. Proof that I wasn't part of the equation anymore. 5 birthdays erased. 5 years of silence compacted into one brutal picture. In that moment, the verdict was clear. I was erased. If they can forget me this easily, I can forget them. I kept working. Classes, shifts, late nights. No one asked how I was holding up. Mom's calls were always about Haley. Dad's questions were always about bills. And me? I faded further in the background. At 19, I stopped expecting surprises. I stopped waiting for someone to say, "We're proud of you." Silence was easier to survive than disappointment. I worked at the library until closing, then walked across campus for tutoring sessions. Every dollar I earned had a purpose. Rent, textbooks, ramen. My friends teased me for never going out. But none of them knew the truth. I wasn't frugal for fun. I was fighting for a future. Meanwhile, Haley was finding herself. Changing majors, joining clubs, switching apartments. Each whim had a price tag. And Mom and Dad paid it without hesitation. "Your sister just has so much potential." That line became my lullaby. Every phone call ended the same. Potential. Not mine. Hers. Still, I didn't explode. Didn't scream. Didn't break down. Instead, I sharpened my edges quietly. I learned to negotiate. To stretch $20 until it bent. To smile through exhaustion. By 21, I had saved enough for a down payment. Not on a house. On belief. Belief that I could stand without them. I celebrated alone with a grocery store cupcake. A single candle flickering in my apartment. I whispered, "Happy birthday, Cassandra. You're still here." It wasn't glamorous, but it was survival. And survival was becoming my strength. Each loan statement reminded me why I worked harder. Each empty voicemail proved I couldn't count on them. Each ignored milestone hardened me into something steel-like. One night, walking home in the snow, I caught my reflection. Eyes tired. Hands raw. But there was something else. Determination. I realized I wasn't fragile anymore. I wasn't waiting for rescue. The life I wanted wasn't going to be given. It had to be built. Brick by brick. Dollar by dollar. Hour by hour. And that slow building became my quiet rebellion. The rebellion of existing when no one expected much. The rebellion of thriving where they thought I'd crumble. I didn't announce it. Didn't flaunt it. I just kept going. Mornings, I ran before sunrise. Cold air in my lungs, feet steady on concrete. I counted each breath as proof I was still standing. At work, Patricia noticed. She handed me a folder. "Lead this account," she said. I froze, then nodded. Finally, someone saw me. I framed my diploma above my desk. Pinned my own birthday on the fridge calendar. Booked a table for one, cake included. I sang quietly and didn't apologize. The absence at my table stung less. The presence of myself mattered more, because deep down I knew the day would come. And when it did, they'd have to see me. Every silent night was forging me into someone unbreakable. It came out of nowhere. A call from Dad, his voice shaky. "Cassandra, we need your help." Help! The word burned. I hadn't heard it from him in years. He said Mom's medical bills were piling up. The mortgage was behind. They needed money, fast. I gripped the phone tighter. "Have you asked Haley?" I asked. The silence was heavy. Finally, he admitted it. "Haley's not in a position to help right now. Not in a position." That phrase rattled. I pushed. "What do you mean?" Another pause. "She's living with us again, in the basement." My breath caught. The golden child. The one with every advantage. Back in the same house we grew up in. I wanted to laugh. Wanted to scream. Instead, I listened. Dad kept talking. "We're family. We've always supported each other. We just need you this time." Supported. I almost dropped the phone. Supported who? Not me. At 21, I was working 3 jobs. At 23, I celebrated birthdays alone. At 25, I begged for a phone call. They didn't support me. They supported her. I remembered Haley's smirk years ago. "It's not my fault you're not as good at school." Now she was the one floundering. And they wanted me to rescue them. That night I barely slept. Memories replayed like film reels. The forgotten birthdays. The excuses. The casual dismissal of my needs. And now, they called me because their investment failed. Because their chosen daughter was sinking. Because the daughter they ignored had learned to swim. The next morning, I dialed Haley. She answered, defensive. "What do you want, Cassandra?" "I heard you're back at Mom and Dad's." "So what? Things didn't work out." "I'm figuring it out." "Figuring it out? It's been years, Haley." She snapped back. "You've always looked down on me. Don't start now. This isn't about me. Mom and Dad are drowning in bills. They asked me for help because you can't." Her laugh was sharp, bitter. "Oh, look at you. Miss Perfect. Miss Self-Made. You think you're better than me. I think I'm the one paying for my own life. While you've been handed everything and still failed." Her silence was louder than words. Finally, she hissed. "I don't need your lecture." Maybe not. But she needed reality. And I wasn't going to cushion it anymore. I hung up before she could spit another excuse. For the first time, I felt the balance shift. Not in her favor. Not in theirs. In mine. Because the truth was undeniable. They'd chosen her. They'd bet everything on her. And now the bet had collapsed. And I was the daughter left standing. The calls didn't stop. Voicemails, texts, even emails at work. "Cassandra, please, we're desperate." Family takes care of family. Family. That word had lost meaning years ago. Finally, I picked up. Mom's voice cracked through the line. "Sweetheart, we know we weren't perfect. But this is serious. We need you." I let the silence stretch. "Do you remember my last birthday?" She hesitated. "Oh, honey, that's not—" "Answer me. Do you remember?" Nothing. Just air. "October 15th, I said coldly. 5 in a row. You forgot all of them." Her breath caught. "Cassandra, please don't bring up the past. The past is why we're here. You poured everything into Haley. Every dollar, every ounce of pride. You made it clear I wasn't worth the investment." Mom started crying. Dad grabbed the phone. "Enough, we admit mistakes, but you can't punish us forever." Punish. The word sliced. "I'm not punishing you. I'm protecting myself." I reminded them of the BMW, of the lavish graduation party, of the vacations, the gifts, the endless excuses. While I worked 3 jobs, eating ramen in silence. "You called me independent," I said. "You told me I could handle disappointment. But the truth is you used me as the child you could neglect. Because Haley required attention, and money, and endless patience." Dad tried to interrupt. "You're twisting this." "No," I snapped. "I'm remembering it. Every detail you want me to forget." The room around me blurred, but my voice stayed sharp. "Now Haley is broke, living in your basement. And you want me to save the family." They didn't speak. I pressed harder. Where was family when I cried alone on my birthdays? Where was family when I begged for recognition? Where was family when I graduated? And you didn't even show up? Their silence was the answer. It always had been. Finally, Dad muttered. We were wrong, but can't you forgive us? Forgiveness. The word almost made me laugh. Forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You chose Haley. Now Haley is the one you lean on. Mom sobbed louder. You're our daughter too, she pleaded. Don't make us lose both of you. I felt my throat tighten, but anger kept me steady. You lost me years ago. When you stopped seeing me at all. Dad's voice cracked. You'll regret this someday. I almost smiled. No, I won't, because for once, I'm not the invisible daughter begging for love. I'm the woman who walked away. And walking away felt like the loudest answer I'd ever given. They wanted me to fold. I chose to stand. After that night, the noise faded. No more desperate voicemails. No more guilt-laced texts. The silence wasn't empty. It was peaceful. It was mine. I poured my energy into the life I had built. Work, friendships, the man who saw me clearly. Every part of my world felt chosen. By me, for me. And the strangest thing happened. I started breathing easier. Like I'd been holding my breath for years, waiting for scraps of attention that never came. In therapy, I admitted the hardest truth. I wasn't grieving the parents I had. I was grieving the parents I wished existed. The ones who celebrated me. The ones who cared without conditions. But fantasies don't change reality. And reality was this. I had built myself without them. And I wasn't broken. When my wedding day came, I looked around at the people who showed up. Jake's family. My friends. The ones who remembered birthdays. Who asked about my life. Who clapped when I won small victories. That was family. Not blood. Not obligation. Choice. Months later, a card arrived in the mail. Thinking of you. Signed by Linda and Robert. I placed it in the trash without opening it. Not out of hate, but out of closure. Because forgiveness isn't about letting them back in. It's about letting myself walk free. I'm Cassandra. I'm 29 years old. My birthday is October 15th. And it's celebrated by people who love me enough to remember it. If you've ever been made invisible, if you've been told your needs don't matter, listen carefully. You are not invisible. And walking away might be the first step toward being truly seen.
I hadn't heard my mother's voice in 4 years, not since the day she handed me a manila envelope and said without looking up from her pearls, "You'll understand one day. It's what's best for the estate." Inside was a formal notice I'd been removed from her will. So when she called on a Tuesday afternoon in mid-June, my first instinct was to let it ring. I almost did, but curiosity has a cruel way of surviving estrangement. "Meredith," she said too softly. "It's Mom." I didn't answer right away. Her voice used to carry the weight of verdicts. Now it felt thin. "I've been thinking," she continued, "about us, about how we left things. I miss you." The word miss did something strange inside my chest. I didn't trust it, but I let her speak. "I was hoping you'd come over, just for coffee. No lawyers, no money talk, just you and me." It was the just that told me everything wasn't just coffee. Still, I said yes. I drove the familiar route to her estate in River Oaks, Houston. My hands stayed tight on the wheel the entire 45 minutes. The gates recognized my plate, but not without hesitation the pause before they creaked open longer than I remembered. It was Evan who answered the door. "Meredith," he said, his voice syrupy smooth like it was trying to make me forget he was nearly 20 years younger than my mother. Evan Cole, 37, gym-built and always in tailored shirts. The man who married my 75-year-old mother 18 months after my father's stroke. He was wearing navy today and a Rolex that hadn't belonged to him 2 years ago. "Come in," he said, motioning with the kind of charm that had probably won over more than one aging heiress. The house looked the same. Cold floors, warm lighting, walls that absorbed rather than echoed. But something about the air was different, less like home, more like staging. My mother sat in the solarium where she used to read me Nancy Drew mysteries when I was 9. Her silver hair was pinned high, her lipstick exact. In front of her 2 porcelain cups. Steam curled upward from both. "Meredith," she smiled. "You look well." I sat down slowly. The chair cushions were firmer than I remembered. "I made your favorite blend," she said, nudging 1 cup forward. The scent was cinnamon, but something else floated under it. Almond sharp and wrong. I touched the handle. Didn't lift. "You didn't have to," I said. "I wanted to," she replied. Her smile was thin as china. And I wondered if you disinherit someone and call them back years later. Is coffee really all you're offering? I didn't drink the coffee. I held it long enough for the cup to warm my palms, then set it back down when Jackie looked away to adjust a cushion behind her lower back. Her movements were careful too. Careful for someone who used to stride through this house like she owned the air. She reached for her cup without hesitation. Evan stood nearby, watching us from the edge of the doorway like a well-dressed shadow. He hadn't touched either cup. I noticed that. My mother sipped. She didn't even flinch. "You're still not wearing makeup?" she said, setting the cup down lightly. "I suppose that's your choice." I let the comment float. I'd been out of her approval for decades. It didn't sting anymore. But then, something shifted. She blinked. Once. Twice. Her hand moved toward her throat fingers, pressing just under the collarbone. "Mom," I said, voice steady. She didn't answer. She reached for the table's edge. Missed. Her eyes darted sideways like a bird caught in glass. Then the coughing began. At first, it was small, a clearing of the throat. Then, violent. Her body curled inward, shoulders shaking as she gasped for air. Jackie Evans' voice cracked into the air. He rushed over, catching her just as she slumped to the side. I stood up, instinct taking over, but I didn't step closer. My mother's lips were turning a color I hadn't seen since law school case files, bluish gray. Evan grabbed his phone, fingers flying. "She's not breathing right. I need an ambulance." River Oaks Drive, number 117. "Hurry, she's not okay." I stayed frozen. Not because I was in shock, because I was watching a performance. His panic was too loud, too exact. It didn't match the terror on her face or mine. The paramedics came quickly. River Oaks money bought fast response times. They stabilized her. Oxygen. IV. She moaned once before they wheeled her out. Evan turned to me, hands still shaking. "What? What the hell just happened?" I said nothing, just followed the gurney with my eyes. At the hospital, I waited in a beige chair under fluorescent lights that made time stall. A nurse came out. "She's stable." "We're running toxicology. There were irregularities." Irregularities. Later that night, an officer stepped into the waiting area. His badge read Garza. He carried a clipboard and a look I'd worn myself once when the pieces were falling into place faster than the mind could process. "Ma'am," he said, "your mother's awake. She's asked to speak. And she says you poisoned her." For a second, the word didn't register. Then it did. And in the hollow pause between syllables, I remembered exactly whose cup I'd taken. They didn't handcuff me. Detective Garza said it was a courtesy, but the silence in the back of that cruiser felt just as binding. I didn't speak during the drive. Neither did he. The interrogation room smelled faintly of ammonia and old coffee, the kind of place where stories were either shredded or sharpened. "Your mother claims you brought the poison," he said, sliding a folder across the table. "That you slipped it into the cup while she was distracted." I didn't answer. He opened the folder. Inside were photos, my hand holding the mug. Jackie coughing. A blurry shot of Evan's panicked face. "Cyanide," he said. "Toxicology confirms it." He flipped one more page. "We also found this in your apartment." It was a small plastic vial, half full, labeled in black Sharpie almond extract. Only it wasn't. My jaw tightened. "I don't keep that. Someone planted it." He nodded like that was possible, but not probable. "There's more," he added. He pulled out a sheet of paper. My name printed in cursive at the top. Underneath, rows of notes, body weight calculations, dosages, absorption rates. At the bottom, 2 words, fastest path liquid. "It's your handwriting," he said. I looked closer. It was close. Uncannily close. But wrong. The slant on the R's was just off. The spacing too exact. I'd once written affidavits half asleep under courtroom fluorescence. I knew my own hand like my pulse. "That's not mine," I said. Garza leaned back. "We're not pressing charges yet. But the evidence is concerning." I walked out on conditional release 3 hours later. My phone had 17 missed calls. Only one mattered. Meredith, a familiar voice, asked, "You okay?" It was Harper Lewis, my former co-counsel from back when I still believed justice was about truth. I'm not sure I said. I met her at her office the next morning. She was sharper than ever, blazer flat's eyes like court steel. "They're setting you up," she said after reading the report. "But whoever's doing it knows the law, and knows you." We made a list. Means whoever planted the vial had access to my apartment. The door lock was old, and I'd never changed it after moving in 5 years ago. Motive Jackie had rewritten her will last quarter. That much was public record. Meredith Cole, 0 inheritance. Evan Cole, primary beneficiary. Opportunity coffee cups. Controlled environment. Evan never drank. "It's textbook misdirection," Harper said. "They want you to look like the bitter, disinherited daughter out for revenge." I almost laughed. It was too convenient. But what gutted me more wasn't the setup. It was the fact that my mother, whether coerced or complicit, had looked into a camera into my face and said she did this to me. "She wants me gone," I whispered. "Or someone wants her to want that," Harper replied. "Either way, it's time we stop reacting and start digging." I nodded. The weight of that forged note still sat in my chest. The words weren't mine, but the shadow they cast that felt terrifyingly real. Harper worked fast. She always had. Within 48 hours, she'd pulled public filings, cross-checked marriage records, and gotten a quiet favor from a probate clerk she once mentored. "Your mother amended her will 3 months ago," she said, sliding the document across her desk. "Removed you entirely. Everything goes to Evan Cole." I stared at the line. "To my beloved husband, Evan, I leave the entirety of my estate liquid and real." I ran my thumb over my own name, or rather the space where it used to be. "She didn't even leave me her jewelry," I murmured. "Not a cent," Harper confirmed. "And get this, Evan's been moving money." We traced 4 separate wire transfers to an offshore account in the Caymans, totaling nearly $820,000. She tapped her pen. "Your mom's money." I sat back, pulse ticking louder. "And the insurance policies," 2, Harper said. "Both under Jackie's name. Both signed after they got married. Evan's the sole beneficiary." She leaned forward. "Meredith, this isn't about a grudge. It's about removing the only person who might contest the will." The thought settled like ash in my throat. "He's done this before," I said quietly. "What makes you say that I don't know? Just a feeling." That night I couldn't sleep, so I followed the feeling. A few hours on legal databases, public death notices, probate delays. I cross-referenced every woman Evan Cole had been connected to over the past 15 years. 2 names surfaced. Angela Rowe died of cardiac arrest at 68. No autopsy performed. Evan listed as companion. Linda Markle died of an accidental fall. Autopsy inconclusive. Evan had power of attorney. Both had estates. Both had sudden changes to their wills in the year prior to death. I printed the files and stared at them until the toner blurred. The pattern wasn't just there, it was practiced. When I was 11, my mother ripped a sketchbook in half. I had drawn a girl in a courthouse scales in one hand, fire in the other. I told her I wanted to be a prosecutor. She smiled without teeth and said, "That's adorable, but no man will marry a woman who argues for a living." She didn't raise her voice. She never needed to. By 14, I stopped showing her what I loved, piano, moot court, even prom. She praised silence more than success. Her compliments were like rationed air offered only when I mirrored her. After Dad's stroke, it got worse. I offered to move home, take care of her. She refused. "We're not some working-class tragedy, Meredith. I'll manage." What she meant was, "You are not welcome." The last time we spoke before the will, before Evan, she called me ungrateful for declining to sign a joint trust. "Family is obligation," she said, "even if it's inconvenient." I remember staring at the veins in her hand, so thin and blue under the skin, wondering how something that fragile could press down so hard. She didn't disown me with anger. She disowned me with poise. And now, lying awake with Evan's pattern of victims in a folder beside me, I understood. She had always admired men who made decisive moves. She taught me to value polish over protest. So why was I surprised she chose him over me? Harper made the first call to a federal contact she trusted. It didn't take long. They've had whispers about Evan, she told me, but nothing stuck. No witnesses. No clear motive until now. Within a day, the FBI agreed to quietly assist. Not arrest. Not yet. Just observe. We set the trap in 3 parts. First, Harper leaked a whisper to a former colleague who now wrote legal columns. A single sentence buried in a write-up about estate disputes. Sources say new forensic evidence may reopen the Cole investigation. Then we let it breathe. Within hours, Evan called my phone. I let it go to voicemail. His tone was measured too measured. "Meredith, this is all a misunderstanding. I think we should talk. I know you're hurting. Let's not drag this further." I didn't reply. The next day, Harper placed a fake package at my apartment doorstep, an unmarked envelope bulging with photo slips of handwriting analysis mock bank statements. All fakes, but realistic enough. The final step, I let it be seen. The neighbor across the hall, whom I barely knew, just happened to walk by while I opened the door. Just happened to peek inside. An hour later, Evan's car was parked across from my building. Not close, but there. "We've got movement," Harper texted. The FBI wired my place for sound, left the door unlocked. We waited. 2 nights later at 2:12 a.m., my front doorknob turned. He came in quietly. Not like a thief. Like someone who believed he belonged. He wore gloves, carried a penlight, went straight to the drawer where the envelope had been, and behind him, half a step late, breathing uneven, was Jackie. Her eyes scanned the room like she didn't trust the dark. She moved slower, stiffer, but she was there. Watching her step into my apartment didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like confirmation that whatever this was, whatever she had become, it was chosen. The agents didn't wait long. Lights flared. Commands were shouted. Evan froze. Jackie cried out once, something between a name and a warning. They were both cuffed before either could touch the envelope. In the stillness afterward, Harper stepped in. She looked at me, not triumphant, not relieved. Just steady. "You were right," she said. I nodded once, but I didn't feel right. I felt hollow. Because part of me had hoped still even then that my mother would stop just short of the edge. They separated them, of course. Evan in a holding cell downtown. Jackie in a hospital bed under guard claiming dizziness and chest pain. But by morning she asked to speak. Only to me. They arranged it in a small windowless room at Memorial Hermann. 2 chairs, 1 camera. No cuffs but 2 officers behind the glass. I walked in first. She was smaller than I remembered, not frail compressed. Her hair undone skin pale beneath the foundation she hadn't fully wiped away. The scent of gardenia clung to her sweater. "Meredith," she said as if my name were still hers to say. I sat. Didn't speak. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "Not at first." I raised one eyebrow. She folded her hands. The nails were still perfect. "Evan," he showed me things, notes, statements, things that made it look like you were planning something. "I thought maybe you were angry." "About the will." I stared at her expressionless. "I thought if I went along with him I could protect you," she added. "Watch him. Keep him close." I let the silence stretch, let her feel it. "Is that what you told the police?" I asked. She flinched. Just slightly. "No. I panicked. When they asked what happened, I thought it was your cup. I wasn't sure. I said your name. You said I poisoned you." Her lips pressed thin. I made a mistake. The word hung there brittle. "What did he promise you?" I asked. "To keep me out, to write me off." She didn't answer. Outside the glass, one of the officers adjusted his stance. Inside, my mother looked down at her lap. "I didn't think he'd hurt me," she whispered. "He didn't," I said. "You drank the wrong cup. That wasn't part of the plan." Her mouth opened, then shut. A single tear escaped, tracing the line where blush once was. I wanted to feel something then. Fury, satisfaction, pity. But all I felt was distance. "You know I said slowly when I was 10, you told Mrs. Redding I was a stubborn child who thinks rules are optional." She blinked, startled. "I remember," I said. Because you smiled when you said it. She looked up at me now, eyes red, voice shaking. What do you want from me? I stood. I used to want an apology, I said, or maybe a reason. I picked up my coat from the back of the chair, but now she waited, breath caught. I just want to never come back here. Then I walked out. She didn't follow. The charges against me were dropped within the week. The headlines shifted from heiress daughter accused to husband faces attempted murder plot. Evan's past came spilling out like oil from a cracked drum. Florida, Arizona, 2 other women. Patterns. Jackie didn't speak publicly. She retained a lawyer and pled diminished capacity. Her health had begun to decline. Or maybe it just showed. The estate froze in probate. I didn't contest the will. Harper asked why twice. I gave her the same answer both times. I don't want what she protected from me. Instead, I packed up my apartment, boxed my books, my files, the coffee mug I never drank from. I left the envelope, the real one, on Harper's desk. You'll know if I need it, I said. Then I drove west toward the edge of Texas where the land flattens and the silence doesn't echo. I rented a place near El Paso. No garden, no history. Some nights I sit on the back steps with a glass of water and count the planes blinking across the sky. Not dreaming, just listening. Because after a life full of accusations, expectations, instructions whispered like law, silence feels like permission. She never hit me, never screamed, never called me names. She just chose other people again and again until I stopped asking why. If that sounds familiar, you're not alone. There are wounds that don't show in courtrooms or police reports. They show in the moment you pause before dialing their number. They show when your voice shakes not from fear, but from history. Some of us didn't run away. We were told to stay quiet, to be good, to not embarrass the family. And we did until silence became survival. If you've ever had to walk away not because you wanted to, but because staying would have made you disappear, just leave a mark, a word, a pause, a memory, even a dot. We'll know what it means. We're still listening. I always thought Grandpa's house would die with him quiet, old, and empty. I didn't know it had become the battlefield. His name was Walter Holloway. Army vet, stubborn as brick. He wasn't warm, not the way people mean it, but he was steady. When I was little and my brother Eric scraped his knee, he'd run to Mom. When I fell, I went to Grandpa. He never babied me, just handed me a rag and said, "Try again, Joe." I was still Joanne back then. Just Joanne. Not the girl who got the house. He passed 5 years ago, 2 weeks shy of my 25th birthday. The funeral was simple. Military flag, 3 volleys, a few neighbors in church suits who hadn't visited in years. When the will was read, everyone expected the house gray brick, 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, porch swing, rusted but still holding to go to the family. To all of us. That's what my mom Linda said afterward. Not out loud. Just in the way she blinked twice and folded her hands tighter. But Grandpa had left it to me. Only me. The lawyer explained it cleanly. Full ownership, no stipulations. There was even a note in his handwriting for Joanne, the only one who showed up before I was dying. I hadn't asked for it. I didn't even live in that town anymore. But I'd come back most weekends during college, stocked his fridge, cleaned the gutters, refilled prescriptions. Not because I thought it would earn me anything, just because someone had to do it and no one else did. Eric, my younger brother by 2 years, was shocked. He was always the golden boy in the family. Not in a loud, flashy way. Just assumed. My mother said Eric's just figuring things out whenever he quit another job. Dad Frank gave him hand-me-down tools, cash loans that never circled back. When I landed a full-time job in community education, no one blinked. When Eric said he was thinking about a podcast, the whole family celebrated with barbecue. So no one said it outright, but I knew what they were thinking. Why would Walter leave the house to her? At first, I didn't touch the place. I changed the locks, paid the taxes, kept the utilities low but running. The porch light stayed on. I couldn't bring myself to sell it, but I didn't move in either. My plan was quiet. Let the neighborhood rise in value, maybe sell it in a few years, and finally open that art therapy studio I'd been dreaming about. For seniors, for veterans, for people like Walter. Still, every now and then, someone in the family would mention Grandpa's house like it hadn't already changed hands. My mom, setting the table, would ask, "Have you thought about what we're doing with the old house?" Yet I'd smile, say, "Still thinking." What I wanted to say was, "There's no we." Then, last fall, Eric got engaged. Her name was Chelsea, and she came with perfect posture, almond milk charm, and a voice that could cut through dinner silence like dessert wine. Everyone adored her, especially Mom. They came back to town over the holidays and stayed with my parents. On New Year's Day, we had brunch at Linda and Frank's. The eggs were runny, the champagne warm, but everyone was in a good mood. Chelsea clinked her glass, smiled toward me, and said, "Joanne, has anyone ever told you how beautiful that house is, the one your grandfather left you?" I nodded. She tilted her head, still smiling. "It would make the most incredible wedding venue." That was the first time I realized the house wasn't just a house anymore. It started the way things like this always do, with charm dressed up as casual. A week after that brunch, Chelsea texted me a photo. It was a Pinterest board full of soft lighting vintage chairs and gauzy white tents draped across a wide green lawn. Beneath it, she'd written, "Isn't this just what Grandpa's place could be?" I didn't reply right away. I stared at the message, reread it 3 times, and closed my phone. Maybe she was just dreaming. Maybe she sent that to 20 people. But deep down, I already knew. This wasn't suggestion. It was setup. That Friday, Eric called. He never really calls, not unless something's wrong or something's wanted. He opened with small talk, asked about work, mentioned a podcast idea he was maybe going to pitch soon. Then came the pause. So he said, "Chelsea was wondering if we could talk about the house. The wedding's still early planning and all, but she thought, you know, sentimental spot, family home. Backyard could be cleaned up real nice." I said nothing for a second too long. He filled the silence. "I mean just for the weekend, maybe a couple days before. She's thinking small, 50 guests, maybe 60. Nothing huge." I asked quietly, "You want to get married in Grandpa's house?" There was a beat of silence before he answered, "Well, it's not like anyone's living there, and it'd be meaningful, right, for the family." There it was again. That word, family, used like a key, trying every lock on me. I said I'd think about it. Chelsea followed up 2 days later. We were at Mom and Dad's again, Sunday dinner, pot roast and mashed potatoes, the kind of meal designed to distract. Everyone was halfway through their plates when Chelsea turned to me and said lightly, "Did you get the Pinterest board I sent? I've been obsessed with that pergola setup." Mom perked up. "Oh, that would be beautiful. And it really would mean a lot to have it at the house, Joanne. So many memories there." I kept my eyes on my fork. "I haven't decided." Chelsea's tone didn't change, but her smile hardened just slightly. "Of course. Totally your call. We just thought, since it's just sitting there." I nodded, not smiling. I didn't want to do this in front of pot roast. Later that night, she texted again. "Hey, just checking in. We'd totally respect your space, of course." And think of the photos. Grandpa's porch swing in the background. I left it unread. The truth is, I'd already imagined what they'd do to the place. Folding chairs on the lawn, portable restrooms out back. Flowers nailed to the fence I stained by hand 2 summers ago. Chelsea's voice filling the living room with bridesmaids laughing behind it. Then, after the party, what a thank you card, a mess, or worse, nothing. Just an assumption that it had always belonged to all of us. And I started to realize maybe that's what this really was. Not a request, a reclamation. It didn't stop with the Pinterest board. Chelsea had a way of dropping things into conversation like they'd already been agreed on. At dinner, she'd say things like, "Once we get the string lights up, it'll feel so magical," or "Eric's uncle plays guitar. We were thinking he could set up near the hydrangeas." No one corrected her. No one asked if it was settled. Eric stayed quiet most of the time. He'd chime in here and there. "We'll clean everything, of course," or "It won't be a big crowd, just close friends and family." But he never actually asked. He just echoed her voice in a softer key. I didn't say no, not yet. I kept dodging. Still thinking about it. Need to check the zoning. Not sure if it's safe for that many cars. Each time, Chelsea nodded sweetly like she respected the process. But the next time I saw her, she'd be further down the planning road. One night, I came over for a family cookout. I brought dessert. She brought a diagram, actual sketches of the backyard layout, guest tables where the bar would go. She'd printed it on parchment-colored paper. Mom Linda clapped her hands when she saw it. "Oh, Chelsea, you're so organized." "Joanne, isn't this adorable?" I just smiled. My mouth said nothing. My shoulders said everything. The next day, Chelsea sent a group message. Just me, Eric, Mom, and Dad. She'd attached a quote from a local catering company alongside photos of table settings staged inside Grandpa's living room. No one asked how the photos were taken. I sat with it for a long time. With the text, with the silence that followed. Finally, I typed, "I'm sorry, but I'm not comfortable hosting the wedding at the house," and sent it. No one replied that night. The next day, Eric called. He didn't sound angry, just worn down. "She didn't mean to push you, Joe. She just really loves the house. You know how rare it is to have a place like that." "I do," I said. He hesitated. "It's just, you're not using it." And she thought it could be a way to bring everyone together. "She's big on family." I closed my eyes. "I've noticed." A pause. Then he said, "You don't have to decide right now." I already did. He let out a breath, said he had to go, and hung up. The next week, the mood shifted. Not overtly, just enough to feel it. Chelsea no longer tagged me in wedding updates online. At Sunday dinner, she skipped the seat beside me and chose the other end of the table. When I offered to help clean, she said, "I think Linda's got it," without looking up. Dad Frank still smiled the same way, but his eyes didn't stay on me long. Mom hummed more than usual. Stirring things, wiping clean counters, staying busy, always too busy to say much. The quiet didn't feel accidental. At another gathering while everyone else was outside, Chelsea stood beside me at the sink and said in that syrupy way of hers, "You know, Joanne, it's a little surprising. I thought you were someone who cared about legacy." I didn't look at her. I just rinsed the plate. She kept going. "Family is everything to Eric. It's the whole reason we wanted to get married at that house. But maybe I misunderstood what kind of person you are." I dried my hands. "Maybe you did." She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Well, at least now we both know." I thought saying no would be the end of it. Instead, it was just the signal to escalate. Chelsea didn't argue again. She didn't need to. She had other tools. At gatherings, she smiled less, but always made sure to speak first, loud enough for others to hear. "We're just so grateful for family. Some people don't get how rare that is. Or it's a shame when old houses just sit there empty while young couples are trying to build something." No one called it out. No one defended me. Eric avoided confrontation entirely. He still messaged me about casual things, movie trailers, sports, but never brought up the house. Like if he ignored the rot, it might stop smelling. Then came the bridal shower. I didn't know when it was until I saw the photos. Dozens of them. Chelsea in white, framed by my mother's kitchen, holding a glass of rosé. The caption read, "So lucky to be surrounded by women who lift me up I wasn't in a single picture." Because I hadn't been invited. That same week, Diane, my cousin on Dad's side, called me. She's in her 50s, lives 2 towns over, and has never been one for gossip. But her voice was low, careful. "I think you should know," she said. "Chelsea's been telling people you're holding the house hostage, that you're punishing Eric." I leaned against the kitchen counter, heart steady, in the way it gets when you've already suspected the worst. She said that I asked. She didn't use those exact words, Diane replied. But, yes, that's what people are walking away with. I thanked her. We didn't say goodbye. We just let the silence hold it. A few days later, I stopped by Mom and Dad's to help Dad with his printer. He'd called the night before, said it was jamming. When I got there, no one else was home. I went to the study, opened the tray, and cleared a crumpled sheet stuck inside. That's when I saw it, another page sitting on top of the stack. An email printout. I wouldn't have looked except I saw my name. The subject line was "Update on the house." The sender, Chelsea. The recipient, someone named Heather. I don't remember the exact first line, but I remember the third. "Don't worry. Frank and Linda will pressure Joanne. She's soft. She'll fold before summer." My hands didn't move. My breathing did. The rest of the message was worse. Honestly, I don't know why she's being difficult. She's not even close with the rest of the family. The house was always part of our story. Eric grew up there more than she did. She acts like it's some shrine. It's just wood and drywall. We deserve a chance to build our future in it. There was a line near the end meant as a joke, I think. By the time we're done, maybe she'll thank us for finally making use of it. I folded the paper, put it back exactly where I'd found it. I fixed the jam, ran the test page, and left. That night, I sat at my kitchen table and began printing my own things, texts, emails, every message that could trace the change. Chelsea's early compliments, the creeping suggestions, the sudden coldness, Eric's silences, my mother's deflections. Each sheet went into a folder. It felt strange, like building a case against people who shared your blood. But even stranger was how easy it was to trace the shape of something I'd been trying to ignore. This wasn't about a wedding. It never had been. It was about erasure, turning my name on a deed into nothing more than a line they hadn't managed to scratch out yet. I called Eric first. He picked up sounding distracted. I didn't waste time. I saw the email I said, the one Chelsea sent about the house. I found a printed copy at Mom and Dad's. There was a pause, a long one, before he said, "Joe, that wasn't meant for you." I figured. She was venting, he added. It wasn't serious. She said I was soft. Said Mom and Dad would pressure me, that I'd fold. His voice tightened. She was frustrated. We've been under a lot of stress. I didn't raise my voice. You knew what she was saying, and you let her keep going. I didn't think she meant it like that. You believed her, though. He didn't answer. I need to talk to Mom and Dad, I said. This isn't just between you and me anymore. He sighed. Don't blow this up. But it was already blown open. I drove over that evening. The porch light was on. Inside the house smelled like lemon cleaner. Mom was wiping the counters again as if they'd never been clean enough. Dad was seated in his recliner eyes on a muted news channel. I held the printout in both hands. I need to talk to you, I said. About the house. And about Chelsea. Dad muted the TV. Mom kept wiping. I found this in the printer, I said. Chelsea sent it to a friend. It's about me. About the house. About how she planned to get you both to pressure me. Mom looked up slowly. She was upset, she said. You've been difficult about this. I said no. That's not difficult. That's clear. She just wants to feel like part of the family, Mom offered quieter. And I don't. My voice didn't rise, but it held. Dad spoke then. Maybe it's time to think about compromise. It doesn't have to be the whole house, just something to show you care. To who I asked. To Chelsea, to Eric, to the family, he said. Keeping peace matters too. I stared at him. I've been peaceful. You just didn't like the kind of silence I gave you. There was a stillness then. The kind that fills a room when truth lands too hard to bounce. Mom finally said, You're holding on too tightly, Joanne. No, I said. I'm holding on at all. Chelsea had said she thought I was soft. I wasn't. I just hadn't needed to harden until now. I folded the paper in half and set it on the table. I won't give you the house. I won't host the wedding. I won't pretend this hasn't been ugly. Then I turned and left. No one followed. I called a lawyer the next morning. Her name was Margaret Fields. Early 60s steel gray hair in a tight knot voice, calm like a judge who's heard everything twice. I told her the story. She didn't blink. When I finished, she said, You've done nothing wrong, Joanne. But it sounds like people around you are hoping you'll forget that. She drafted a letter simple, direct, and final. It stated that the house at 223 Ashton Lane was my legal property and would not be made available for private events or temporary occupancy. It also advised all future requests to be directed through legal counsel. I printed 4 copies, one for Eric, one for my parents, one for Chelsea, and one for myself. The silence lasted 2 days. Then it cracked. Chelsea posted a photo, an old one, of her and Eric standing on my grandfather's porch during a previous visit. The caption read, Some people confuse kindness with weakness, but we know who we are. We love even when it's hard. It got dozens of comments. You deserve that house more than any one family should come before paperwork. She'll regret this one day. She never used my name, but she didn't need to. Aunt Marlene called me that night. I hadn't spoken to her in over a year. She sounded breathless. Joanne, honey, I don't mean to pry, but Chelsea's saying you're refusing to let them use the family home for the wedding. Is that true? It's my house, I said. I know, sweetheart, I know. But wouldn't it be easier just to let them have the day? What's one weekend? The next morning, my inbox held 3 more messages from cousins. One was polite. The other 2 were not. I stopped checking. Eric didn't call. He didn't text. He just vanished into the middle. Mom left me a voicemail. You didn't need to get lawyers involved, Joanne. This was a family matter. You've made it. Harder than it had to be. Dad sent an email. You've always been strong-headed, but don't let pride ruin everything. We can still find a middle ground. I didn't answer either of them. Instead, I sat at the kitchen table and opened the folder I'd started every text, every printed message, every thread of quiet erosion. I read them slowly, not to prepare for a fight, but to remind myself I hadn't imagined it, that I hadn't overreacted, that kindness didn't mean surrender. 2 days later, Margaret called me. They've responded, she said. Or rather, Chelsea did. She'd replied with a dismissive note, claimed my reaction was unfortunate and that she had no intention of continuing a dialogue with hostility at its center. Then she added a line about being sad for the damage done to family bonds. Margaret paused before she said, "She's trying to reframe the narrative." I know, I said. She's clever, but not careful. That night, I opened Facebook and saw a new post from Chelsea. Just words this time. It's always the people who speak the least who carry the sharpest knives. No comments allowed. I turned off my phone, made a cup of tea, and sat in the dark with the window open. They wanted me quiet. They wanted me pliable. And when that didn't work, they wanted me erased. But I was still here. I made the final call on a Thursday. It had rained all morning, a slow, gray drizzle that blurred the windows of the law office. Margaret had a cup of coffee waiting for me. I slid the envelope across the table. "I want it donated," I said, "to the Veterans Housing Initiative, in my grandfather's name. No ceremony, no plaque." She read the letter once, then looked up. "Are you sure?" I nodded. The house that sparked so much fury, so many whispered insults and twisted posts, would now belong to someone who needed it. Not to Eric, not to Chelsea, not even to me. A week later, the papers were signed. I didn't tell anyone, not at first, but word got out. Mom called, sounding panicked. "Joanne, what did you do?" I let the silence stretch. Dad was next. "We didn't raise you to be vindictive." "I'm not," I said. "I'm done." Eric never called. Chelsea posted a quote about letting go of toxic people. I didn't read the rest. I went back to my quiet apartment, back to work, back to walking the same morning block with my coffee in hand. For the first time in months, the air felt light. They called it selfish when I protected what was mine. Then they called it dramatic when I gave it away. But no one ever asked why I stopped coming to the family dinners. No one asked why I stopped answering the phone. No one asked what it cost me to keep the peace for 37 years. I didn't explain. Some things you walk away from not because you're angry, but because you finally learned to stop knocking on a locked door.